It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs.
Welcome back. This is hour 2 of Where You Live with Gene and Tony, and our topic on the big show today is insurance. We've been talking about the ins and outs of how frustrating it is in dealing with an insurance claim. Our guest today is Rob Kina, who is a partner with the law firm of Helmuth and Johnson. And we've been covering a lot of ground here. We've got a lot to go here, too. But if folks, if you want to be a part of the show, Tony, tell them how they can.
Please call us with questions or comments on this topic or any other topic, 651-289-4488.
And if you're just joining us now here in the second hour, in the first hour we were talking about what's been known as the appraisal process. And, Rob, you were saying that most people, when they think of appraisals, they usually think of a home appraisal when they're buying real estate. But this is a different process. And then you said it's probably a little bit more in its end game here, kind of like arbitration. Is that right?
It's very much like arbitration, except that the sole question that the panel is evaluating is, what is the value of the loss? If the insurer isn't contesting coverage, well, then the question becomes, if you have a disagreement, it is likely to be, how much is this loss worth? So I was saying, when I would receive a notice that coverage had been, accepted on a loss, and the dispute was valuation, I would often advocate for my clients, property owners, homeowners associations, townhomes, condominiums, whatever, that the loss was X, Y, or Z. And the typical battle today relates to matching. And what matching is, a term of art used in insurance and legal industry and real estate industry, is this. What happens if I have a hailstorm on my siding, and the north side of my building gets sufficient dents on that side of the building so that you have to replace that elevation of the building siding? But what happens if that siding just isn't manufactured anymore?
Let me
And that actually happens a lot.
Let me tell you, that happened about 4 or 5 years ago with a property we manage. We had, in this particular case, a person early in Sunday morning who they came driving through the property, and the car went through the east wall of a home in this homeowner association. They left, and before the homeowners could get up and knew what happened, police weren't around, filed an insurance claim, could not find matching siding. If we found siding that matched in color, there was, it seems like a small thing, but that lap siding was probably off by a quarter of an inch. So by the time you take a look at how many pieces of siding you would put up going up a couple stories, it's not off a quarter of an inch. By the time you get up to the top, the siding isn't matched by a couple of inches.
Yeah.
And to me would look off-putting and not something that a homeowner would like.
Well, imagine it this way. Let's say I'm driving my car, and somebody drives through a red light and crashes into my front fender. And the color for my car is no longer available, cannot be matched. And they can replace my front fender, but it will not be the correct color. Would we accept that?
Would we put up with that? No,
We would say,
absolutely
sorry, you have to paint the whole car. And that's essentially what my argument is with these insurers. When they come forward and they say, we will only give you that north elevation which has been damaged, and they'll cite specific language of the policy, and I'll say to them, and I would typically, historically, and have many times say, well then, we'll demand an appraisal. We feel that the value of this loss is the cost of 4 sides of siding rather than the one side that you're claiming. Well, their traditional response had been, sorry, that's not valuation, that's coverage. They're saying, we're arguing that sides 2, 3, and 4 are not covered. You're saying, Mr. Kina, valuation, we say that's coverage. And that's where the battleground has been on these appraisals. It's been, well, we have 10 shingles which have been damaged on the top of this roof, but you can't match them, so we can put in some non-matching shingles. You drive down 94 and look past downtown, you look at, there's buildings there, you can see non-matching shingles which have been installed. So the battleground has been to demand matching. And I'll ramble on a little bit here, and I'll tell you what the history on this is. 13 years ago, a trial court found in Hennepin County that there was coverage so that they had to buy matched siding. But today, the question becomes, what's the value of a trial court's decision versus an appellate court's decision? So that's where the battle's been.
Well, and part of this too, with anything, it comes down to a matter of how serious this is to pursue. A homeowner who may be dealing with a company that is not going to insure them, and the difference is $5-7 may not have as strong, may not consider pursuing that legally compared to a homeowner association where you have 150 units, and now you're talking about $350,000-400,000 bill.
Right, and that's where appraisal comes in. I'll give two examples of how appraisals are handled. There's the methodology where me or one of my team members is brought in, and we present it like an arbitration with lawyers, and the insurer puts a lawyer on the other side, and they have professional appraisers and umpires on. And then there's the less formal version. I'll explain how both are done so homeowners can understand when they're facing the $6,000 or $7,000 difference that they can really handle an appraisal themselves. But you're right. I had an insurance claim in one of the northern suburbs, and the association had 130 some roofs. It was townhomes, and they'd been offered $18,000, and there were no more matching shingles available to them. And what the insurance company said was, well, take the shingles off of this building here and use those shingles to feather them in on the remainder buildings, and we'll pay for a new roof on that building only, and you can use these used shingles to feather them in to match up the other buildings. I explained to them that under the applicable building code, that's actually a misdemeanor, and I wrote them a letter saying, yeah, please confirm in writing that you want my association to commit a misdemeanor. And
tell the listeners why that is a misdemeanor, too.
Well, it's a misdemeanor because it may be the use of unsafe building materials, but there's a law that says it's a misdemeanor, and there's no simple law that says you may not use these used materials, and it's a good law. And imagine if you're having your home built and you don't know what's inside your framing, etc. You don't want them using used building materials. You want the new stuff because you want your home safe.
Yeah.
And that law extends to the repair of roofs, etc. Now, I'll tell you, in that northern suburb community, we had an $18,000 offer. We demanded an appraisal. We presented the appraisal, and the settlement was $1.2 million.
Wow.
And the other thing that came to my mind when I heard you talk about that case is the idea of, well, taking the good stuff off of various buildings to make up or to feather in the new stuff there, pull some other stuff off to make up for the one just the one building. That's going to take a lot more labor than the insurance company is going to pay anyway.
Well,
that becomes just
it's wasteful.
Wasteful,
right?
Yeah.
But if they're contrasting with a $1.2 million loss, if they can pay someone $30,000 to take those shingles and feather them in around the community, or pay $1.2 million, they'll be wasteful if they can't.
Let me ask you this. So on the matching issue, are you likely to win that argument or not in the state of Minnesota?
Well, there's a new case, and it is pretty exciting for attorneys who represent homeowners. One of the attorneys on it is an attorney I used to work with. He's a good lawyer. And that case is called QBE Insurance Corporation v. Twin Homes of French Ridge Homeowners Association, kind of a classic homeowners association name. And what occurred in that circumstance is that the attorneys on behalf of the Homeowners Association demanded an appraisal when there was a matching situation. The matching situation is just like what we described. You know, you can't match the shingles, you can't match the siding. And the appraisal panel made the decision that they would award replacement of all of the sides, the equivalent of all of the sides of the siding in my earlier example. Now, let me tell you how appraisals go so you can understand how this went. An appraisal provision in an insurance policy requires the insured to name their own appraiser who is going to set a value at the loss. The insurance company, they will name their own appraiser to set the value of the loss, and then the two of them will agree on a third-party neutral called an umpire.
So everybody picks their own champion
Right.
for their own cause.
And technically, they're supposed to be unbiased, but the fact of the matter is that's rarely the case. So, but the umpire truly is. So then you present your information. If a lawyer is doing it, very often it'll be rather formalized, where the lawyers will present diagrams and photos and inspection of the property and legal arguments, etc. And to the appraisal panel, all three of them, and the appraisers will say. Our appraiser will say, well, Mr. Umpire, it should be this much, and the insurers will say, Mr. Umpire, it should be that much, and the umpire essentially makes the decision.
Well, one question when you talked about the umpire, how is he paid, and from who? Because that would determine, in my mind, in some ways, whether or not this person's really neutral or not.
Yeah, under the standard appraisal provision in an insurance policy, and I've never seen one that doesn't say this, the homeowner or property owner pays their own appraiser and half the umpire, and the insurance company pays their own appraiser and half the umpire.
So it's really equitable. Just split right
Really.
down the middle.
Should be.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot more to cover on this appraisal process, but we need to take a break right now. You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony on AM 1280 The Patriot. We'll be back after this.